Okay, who's up? Aziz, do you want to start?
1 minute. I am preparing the
Okay.
live.
We have our new light on this morning, so I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah, I want to say hi to everybody while we're waiting and just tell you I've been here for 2 hours because I converted the time incorrectly today. So I'm really glad to start now.
Good to have you.
Thank you all for coming.
Good to see you, Rita.
Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you too. I love the interactive nature.
Good evening, everyone.
We're all in
Welcome
this
to
together.
another online session. I am very excited to welcome our friend, guest speaker from Oregon, Rita Wirtz, and also our ambassadors. We have Hassan Tiroula and we have Fatin Abdelmalik from Tunisia. I will let Hassan do the introduction, present the topic, and then Fatin will share the presentation, which is about powerful strategies to boost vocabulary.
Back to school special.
Back to school special. So, Hassan, you can start.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aziz. Thank you, Everyone Academy, for this wonderful opportunity. I think what Everyone Academy is doing right now is a good example of a learning community, a global learning community that brings together experts and teachers to learn from each other. It's really a great pleasure to join you today for this session, to meet Rita from the USA and Fatin from Tunisia, to work with you all. I'm sure we're going to learn together with you and with the teachers who are following us on Facebook. So the topic for today is powerful strategies to boost vocabulary, which is based on Rita's book on reading. I think this comes timely, and the topic of reading and vocabulary is very relevant for English language context in countries like Morocco, where of course exposure to the language is limited because it is not used in the immediate environment beyond the classroom. And so the teachers and the learners, they really need strategies to not only learn vocabulary, but also learn culture and other content through vocabulary. So especially in these current circumstances of the pandemic, I think the choice of the topic is really a success, because when teachers join their classrooms next September, we don't know what the situation will be like, but one thing is sure, the teachers will not have too much time, and they will have to deal with vocabulary learning in quite difficult circumstances. So this is an opportunity to help these teachers to share our knowledge and expertise. So I'm sure we are going to learn together. Before I pass on to Rita, to Fatin actually is going to share the presentation, I would like to remind our audience of the objectives of Everyone Academy, which is to bring teachers together, to get teachers learn together, and to encourage collaboration among teachers. So this is a very flat strategy, which is a strategy where nobody is an expert or nobody is the know-all, but we all come from different backgrounds and we share our knowledge. And I think this is the mission of Everyone Academy. And I really congratulate Aziz and Everyone Academy for this. So this is just to remind ourselves of the mission. So let's get started, and welcome everyone to today's workshop, where I'm sure we're going to learn a lot together. Fatin, the floor is yours.
Okay. I would like to mention that this is Aziz in our second reading webinar. The first one was on comprehension, second one vocabulary. The third in the series will be on building fluency and proficiency in our reading, including a little bit of speed reading. So we're just getting started. Thanks for coming, everybody.
You're welcome, Rita. Thank you.
I wanted to co-teach with Aziz because I'm a big advocate of team teaching and co-teaching and working in pods, especially for this fall when kids are going to be at all different levels. So one of my greatest thrills has been this last year meeting Aziz and doing sessions for him and with him. So here we go, boosting vocabulary. Let's start off with the KWL format, anchor chart or format, however you're choosing to use it in your classroom. And the organizers that we have here are all in my blog that Aziz will post for you in case you missed it. And also in my book, my revised reading champions. So Donna Ogle did the KWL chart in the 70s. I added to it. So for right now, we're going to do just the first two columns, I know and I want to know. I'm going to turn it over to you, Aziz, for a moment.
Yes, maybe the first category we can ask people, what do you know about or what strategies you use to teach vocabulary, and what do you know in this session? What do you want to know more about teaching vocabulary in your classroom?
When you're doing this with your students, whether they're young children or adults, I've taught all levels through adult. Sometimes they don't have the schema or their background knowledge. They don't know what they don't know. So if that happens, then we just take a moment or two to make a hook where we're going to give them some background knowledge to be able to connect with the rest of the lesson. So not everybody knows what they know. They may not know anything about it.
So we can wait for people to write some comments.
I'd be interested if anyone already has a comment they'd
or,
like to
or
add.
maybe we can exchange some comments now. Yes, what techniques or what strategies you use to teach vocabulary? What are the strategies that you know, that you practice in your classroom?
I'm not able to see the group's comments, so I'm wondering also if our two guest experts would like to chime in on this before we move on to the rest of the presentation. Do either of you two have one thing that you might want to add that's really working well for you, or what you want to know?
You mean in the reading, in teaching?
Yeah, we're looking at reading. Everybody's a reading teacher now. I've written a lot about this and done many podcasts about this now. Everybody has to be a reading teacher. You have to know how to teach basic reading skills. That's just the way it is. There's going to be no way that a reading intervention person or a program is going to do it this year. We all have to take part in being reading teachers, period.
Rita, maybe I can, if you want, echo some of the ideas I hear from teachers.
Yes.
It's that generally the teachers, they would say that they know how to prepare students for reading, how to activate background knowledge, how to activate the schemata of learners, and how to do the while reading stage. They know how to prepare reading questions, etc., and also the post-reading stage. But probably one of the challenges, what they would like to know, or I would personally want to know, is what the challenge I used to face as a classroom teacher is how to make learners autonomous in terms of reading strategies and vocabulary building strategies. Because I teach them in the classroom, but how can I make sure that when they go out of the classroom, they will continue to learn by themselves to develop vocabulary and reading skills?
That's a wonderful point, because I push for immersion all the time. You know, if they can't walk out of the classroom and keep using the vocabulary, then that is a bit of a dilemma. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. We need to not only have autonomy for our teachers, but we need autonomy for our students, because they are the designers of their own learning now. We really are the guide on the side, just offering opportunities for them to learn. But it's very important, and that was what this whole session was about as we saw what we wanted it. We wanted students to have strategies that when they come across words they didn't know, they would be able to access those. I do not believe in calling it word attack. No, we're not attacking anything. It's about word study and word recognition, and it's a joy.
We discussed this earlier about teaching vocabulary detached, right?
We made the point earlier that doing crossword puzzles, word searches, and scrambled words is not the way to boost our vocabulary or our spelling. So we want real, vital, viable strategies, and that's where we're about to take off and show. I think we ought to move on, Aziz.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, I mentioned to Aziz right from the start that we make decisions as teachers whether we are going to teach detached or embedded. If we teach detached, that means we're just always pulling the words for the students. And that's an okay thing. In some respects, we do need to pull out some words ahead, but we also need to teach embedded where the words are right in the reading. So we do pre-teach, but we want to make sure that we're knowing that we're going to pre-teach and teach embedded as well. All right, Aziz.
Yes. So as you can see here, we have the link of the text. The title of the text is Moroccan Traditional Clothes. So we are going to share with the link of the text in the comment section. So, but before we do that, we just want you to just make guesses about what the text will talk about from just the title. Just brainstorm some ideas. What do you think the text will talk about? I know that it's a little obvious from the title, but we want more details, not just clothes. We want more details. Different types of clothes. Is it going to talk about what people wear in certain occasions, in you know, festivals or in certain celebrations? So if you,
we always read before we start reading, we always make predictions, and then we read to find out if we're right, and then we check it, and then we go back and we read some more. This will tie in with vocabulary, because if words are there that the students don't know, they're going to lose their meaning in the reading. But we always start with predictions. All right,
yes.
should we move ahead?
Okay.
Next slide. I developed sentence frames, not like I made it up, but I started to use sentence frames many years ago in second language classrooms, and I have found that the frames really give us a nice mental construct. So Aziz wrote down, I think the text is about, and that's really where we start. So I think the text is about da-da. I think the text is about da-da. And students can do this again alone or together. It can be on paper, it can be online, wherever you're working, it won't matter.
Sentence frames really plays a great role in you know, helping students write something, because students often complain about what about writing. They don't know the expressions, but if we help them with sentence frames, it will you know, create some sense of confidence in them. So the text is about this, about Moroccan clothes. The text is about just one idea or two.
Okay, so everybody's been thinking about it. Let's go on to the next slide.
These are the questions about the text. Before we go to the pictures, there are questions. Yes. Okay. Yes. So maybe Hussein or Fatin can answer those questions. Let's start with Fatin. What are the most popular? You are our neighbors.
Without having read the article.
Okay, we are neighbors, so I think I know about Qaftan. It is the same here. I think also we have here Jibba and Bornos. So we have many common points here, okay? So, but by the way, the Tunisian women like the kaftan so much, and it is our famous here also clothes, okay?
Okay.
You see, Aziz, it's good if you have a multicultural group class like this. It makes it even fun. So I'm trying to listen to Fatin, and there is an information gap. I'm also trying to find out what the most traditional clothes are in Tunisia. And she's speaking, she's not really sure probably what are the most popular clothes in Morocco. So it's really good. If we try to find an audience which has this gap, it makes it even fun.
Well, we know people from all over the world will be seeing our sessions, so it makes it even more interesting. I always said that Twitter brought the world closer because that's when I met Aziz Zubai, and we've had such a great time learning together.
Yes, let's move to the second one. What types of clothes you know in Morocco? So Fatih mentioned kaftan. So what?
ملحفة. I think ملحفة. Okay.
Do you know? Yes, we have it.
We have the same here for women's to cover the head and their shoulders here. Okay, so it is a traditional clothes, especially in Amazighian villages here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Beautiful.
great. So the purpose or the objective of the question number 3 is to make readers or students curious about the text. What do you want to know about clothes in Morocco? So because
sometimes it's called the hook.
Yes, it's a hook. It's like a motivator.
Yes.
Because when the reading has a purpose, and we discussed this with Rita, when the reading has a purpose, people or learners tend to read. But when it is without a purpose, it becomes a boring activity, right?
In our last session, Aziz and I talked a lot about the fact that comprehension is a search for meaning. And so that's really what we're looking at, is we're looking for meaning. What do we already know? What do we need to know? And things start making sense then, and we have a way to get at where we're going. These are interesting questions because it does in part depend on our cultural background and what we know. And that's why it's been so thrilling to me, because I've been learning so much that I didn't know from Aziz. We teach each other, and that's what learning is all about.
Yes, I shared the link to the text for people to read the text.
Okay.
Because we are going to show them pictures. Yes, the first picture.
We will do a quick look at the article, not word for word. All right, so let's show that beautiful caftan. You put it on there and took it off. I love this gown, this caftan. It looks to me like it was hand beaded, but I'm not sure. I don't have the expertise, but it's absolutely gorgeous. So one of the words that I kept picking out for the next part of the presentation, I kept coming back to caftan because it's so beautiful.
You see, vocabulary is also learning about culture.
Yes.
And cultural artifacts or cultural products. They are very interesting to create the need for reading, especially when the item, if the item is in itself representative of a certain culture. Imagine if we had here 2 or 3 items from different cultures. It could even be more interesting. Maybe an item from the USA, another one from India, and probably we can compare when these items are worn, what circumstances, etc., etc. So it's really interesting, yes.
Yes, we always need a purpose for reading. If you don't have a purpose,
Exactly.
Okay, Aziz, should we go on? Oh, these were gorgeous too. I thought they were all silk, but these they're different fabrics. Aren't they beautiful? What kind of vocabulary words might we think about looking at those beautiful gowns?
Colors. We can pre-teach some colors, right? We can pre-teach, I don't know, certain patterns like decorations, something like this.
They're so beautiful. That's where the keeps coming out for me. It's just beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. So look at the article. Let's find 3 new interesting words. So when Aziz and I went through it many times, the words that I kept coming up with was traditional. It also has traditionally in the article, celebration, and engagement. Now, the words that I picked out from the article were words that were prefixes, suffixes. They had different numbers of syllables, or there was something unusual that had them stand out. So let's move on, and let's see what else we can find beside these samples. All right.
Yes, I shared the text in the comment section, so people can read it and find a new word. What does it mean? A sentence. There is also people also can use an online dictionary
Yes.
to help them find the meaning of the word and to use it in a sentence. I will share the link in the comment section too.
Okay. So we had Vocabulary Builder 1 as one of our choices to use as an organizer or as an anchor chart for the classroom for those who like anchor charts. And could we show them the next one also, Aziz? Let's show them another format. Okay, that's the dictionary.
So this is online dictionary. I will share. I wish I share
That's terrific.
the comment section.
All right, this is my vocabulary builder number 2 as another kind of an option for those who like to have a format or something to help make a construct for students. Again, it could be an anchor chart. So for this one, let's just pick that word traditional and let's define it. How would we define traditional?
And we can use it in a sentence and
and if we know if it has a synonym or an anonym, we may or may not know as a student. We may or may not know what part of speech it is yet. But by golly, I'll bet once we know traditional, that I could certainly draw something there.
But the hardest part is how to draw it. It's a little bit tricky. No?
How would you show traditional? In this case, I would draw the caftan.
Yes, it's some words are really hard to visualize.
Right.
Like traditional.
And so those were words that we probably wouldn't do the draw it part. We'd have to see what we need. Okay, let's look at the other one. Let's look at that web too. That comes up next. Oh, okay, we're gonna do that first. All right, so first we're gonna look at that article then, and let's look at and see what words stand out. We're just gonna skim, not read it word for word. Oh, now it popped up. Okay, I knew it was there. This is the last chart that we will be looking at, and of the charts that I pulled for today. But again, we don't have to do all of those on the web. We could say the word, we could write it, define it, use sentence, and again, draw to make it. Or here's where it gets fun. I don't have the voice, but boy, do I sing words. And I can also act it out. The more active that we are in learning vocabulary words, whether it's making it, singing it, dancing, cooking it, whatever it takes, but the more active it helps the brain remember. We also know brain's pattern seeking, so that's why the elements that we're about to be doing today next really come in handy to learn new vocabulary. But what we don't do, again, is no word searches, scrambled words, or crossword puzzles. That is not how we remember new vocabulary. And it's
so Rita, we can also maybe add, and I am not sure about Lihsan and Fatin, what they think about this, but we can also add spelling and pronunciation to this chart.
Yes. Let me make a point today. Again, we had spelling. I had to cut it out due to time. It was a whole separate seminar, but we're looking mostly today at word study, morphology, word parts, and that's structural analysis of the English language, the structure. That would include syllables, compound words, word families, contraction roots, prefix, suffixes. And then we also added in idioms because they're so colorful. And spelling is always there. When we learn new words, we want to spell them. That's all in my book and in my blog, but again, we had to cut it for time today.
So what I see, Rita, is telling us is that the structural analysis of vocabulary and the morphological analysis of vocabulary helps students to internalize vocabulary and to remember it and to find patterns of vocabulary in reading text so that they can relate this to their prior knowledge, to other languages, maybe even compare it to other languages.
When we get to prefixes and suffixes, we will be mentioning that of 20,000 most common words in English, that at least 12,000 were from Latin and Greek. Now, that doesn't mean they all were. Every language has something in our language, English language borrowed from everywhere. But what bothers me is a lot of times people think that the English language is just impossible. It has so many exceptions. Today, we're not working with decoding or word recognition, basically phonics, taking part by phonics. But the bottom line is that at least 85% of the English language, or if we want to go lower, let's say even 65% of English, is actually pattern. And so we always look at our patterns first and see what we could do. Yes, brain is pattern seeking, and so are we. What we're doing is these strategies are very powerful, and you can see how easy what we're doing will be for them. The first things that we gave were a format that we can use for all the students all the time, regardless of reading program that they're using or vocabulary sections. Everybody has to know ways to boost vocabulary because that's what will enhance the comprehension for the students. All
I
right?
like the one related to sing it or act it out.
Oh
But
boy.
maybe this is done with the young learners. I'm not sure about adults.
I've done it with junior, senior high and adults. They like to do things. We think that they don't want to work with their hands or Play-Doh or Wikisticks or Makerspace stuff. That wouldn't be true. It's a great way to learn new vocabulary by getting our hands on it, whatever we can, or our body involved in it. TPR, total physical response. Go back to Krashen's work. It's all of us involved in learning new words. But these are just some basic strategies and formats that will help.
Rita, I've got a question, Rita, for you. From an intercultural perspective, don't you think we could also add, say it in your own language, in your mother tongue?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And something, for example, many years ago, I was working in border schools on the border of California and Mexico. When I was working on my Spanish, and I had fairly decent classroom Spanish at the time. But we were working in decoding with the students and word families came up, and it doesn't quite translate the same for Spanish. But because we were so active with word families, rhyming in a word family, the beginning is the onset, the ending is the rhyme, not R-H-Y, but R-I-M-E. And so you've got cake, bake, take, lake. Because of the repetition and the rhyming and the patterning, we were able to do it with those second language learners, no problem. But ostensibly, when I first came in with it and said to the teachers I was working with that day and team teaching with them, I'm going, let's try word families. And they're like, it doesn't work in Spanish. But you know what? It did. It's about how we approach it. Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Yes.
We want to have so many strategies that students just have automaticity where they just know, oh, wait, I didn't get it that way, I'll get this way. In the new reading wars going on, and this is nothing against science of reading, but part of what I see is bothering me that we're taking out the idea of context clues or cues, and also does it look right, does it sound right, make sense, cueing it's called. All of a sudden, those are not as important. But to me, it's all important. The more strategies we have to teach students, the more they have that they can pull on their own. And that's what it's all about, is getting them to be viable, independent learners. We know, moving them from the state of dependence to independence. And that's what we're doing today. You guys have asked some great questions. I'm so glad you're here with us. I think we'll come back for the third session too.
Okay, can I ask something here?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm a teacher in elementary schools. My students are 9, 10, and 11 years old, and for 2 years they have announced exams in English, so it is just like a club. My students love acting it out. And they enjoy it. They enjoy using their hands. They enjoy writing words, new words on the sand, or just to color it, or to cut and paste words to learn them. Yes. So I use mind maps. And I use songs, stories. We can go out in the playground and see trees and birds, and they will learn from their environment. I think also that students are visual and auditory and kinesthetic learners, so we have to pay attention to these different categories and different characteristics of learning. So I'm enjoying this booster chart, and I will make it on I will make it in my classroom for the next year, inshallah. Okay, so it is
Oh, I
good
love
for
it.
them and for me to remind me about all these important points to learn a new vocabulary. Thank you so much, Rita.
Well, thank you, but I want to remind you that we're all in this together. There's no joke better together, especially this year.
Yes,
We have to have a wide variety of things to do. One thing just doesn't always work. And so all you're doing with mind mapping and taking the kids outside and touching and feeling and experiencing, that is how we learn, not just lists of words. Aziz, if we might move on, but boy, do I
yes.
appreciate that
Yes.
comment. That's the way that's the way I teach. I mean, that's the way I've always taught.
So this is again the link to the text. So I share it in the comments for comment section for people to look at the text and read it. So you.
Okay, so while we're saying that vocabulary is tied in with comprehension, just letting our eyes just run down this page, I'd like to know, do any words stand out as new words for us? I know there were many for me, especially the names and the titles, but let's just take a little quick look here and see what stands out. Any new words or interesting words?
Now let's start with you, Rita. What new words you learned?
Oh boy. Well, I wrote down, and I'm going to look up a little bit because I didn't want to forget them. I wrote celebration because that had TION. It has a suffix. Traditional. It had a
No,
suffix.
not English words.
Oh, I'm sorry. Boy, being. Okay.
Coach.
Okay. Well, I got caftan. That was my easy one. It was tuxedo, was new for me. I think I'm saying that right. And let's see. Was it Dara? Dara?
Yes.
Did I say that one right? Okay, you guys are putting me on the spot here. Okay. Salat al-Jamoa. Is that
Salat
close?
al-Jumu'ah.
Okay. Now you see what I'm doing. This is what the kids would be doing, wouldn't they? Not the Moroccan words they would know because they're in Morocco, but that's how they're going to be looking at other words. Let's take a look at the word mosques, for example. It's easy. It's a one-syllable word. I knew the word mosque right up near the top. But I wanted to point out to teachers that in English, you never have a Q without a U. It's always a quoth sound. Q and U get married. So the more fun things like that we can insert also, the better. But that word stood out to me. I knew mosque, but I wasn't sure if everybody knew that Q and U always went together in English. Let's see if I saw, is this right?
Rita.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Rita. Yeah, I just, one word, I mean, that I find that maybe some students would notice is in the third paragraph, handmade, because it's a compound word. And also as teachers, the teachers can also do what is called consciousness raising. They might give students hints to help them identify compound words like handmade, and then using questions, they can make the students realize that it's made of two words, hand, and made is the participle form of the verb to make. And so the students can think of other words like this that they know, or the teacher can introduce further words, and we can come up with a category of compound words like that. And the same can,
Exactly. I have handmade down. That was one of the words because you could see hand and made right away. So yeah, you're
we
terrific.
need a capital letter here. Maybe,
yeah, and the it, I saw that. Okay. Well, that's the idea of what we're looking at. We're looking for words that stood out. And now we're going to go back and flip what we're doing. And we're going to go back and pull those structural pieces to give ideas on how you might teach it. So if we can move on, Aziz, we should be going probably to, if we're right on track, to syllables. Next, let's see what comes up. Could we go ahead?
Yes, okay.
We're going to keep coming back. Okay. Now, syllables had to come into the presentation for working on vocabulary. In my actual book, the Reading Champions book, I have many activities for building syllables. It's lots of fun stuff, clapping, stamping, etc., and holding up cards or fingers or numbers for number of syllables. But we wanted to pick something really easy for here. So the activity was to take a look and let's see what 2, 3, 4 syllable words were actually in that article. So I'm going to help a little bit on that. And I pulled, let's see, engagement, transparent, updating. So Aziz, did you write down any of those words, or should we put them in now?
Yes, the examples. Are you talking about the examples?
Yeah, on the
Yes,
syllable.
we have the examples after this slide.
Okay,
Example.
let's look at that then. Let's go to that. All right, there we go. So the notion is that we're not quite there yet. Yeah. So the notion is that it's very important to teach syllables when you're doing vocabulary, because whether it's a first grader or a college student or an adult in adult ed, where I actually started out, syllables are the big game changer. If they can find out how many syllables are in the word and pick them apart, that's where the word study comes in, because they can get it. So if we had the word celebrations, just for an example, let's just clap it, celebrations, how many? And then I always have the kids show me with their fingers, 4, or they could have a number card. So then I would write on that column 4+ celebrations. All right, traditionally, we can get 5 out of that. I might stamp it, I might do puffs of air, whatever you're going to do just for the fun of it to get those syllables out, but then I'm going to mark traditionally on the column that said 5+. Now, the reason that I have students do that is to see that there are lots of ways to get at those words, but through syllables, breaking it apart, we often find a little word that we already know within the big word. So it's a lot of fun to do it that way.
Rita.
Yes.
Maybe a question that some teachers would ask is, why should we help the students to recognize the syllables? I mean, from a pedagogical perspective, from the perspective of language learning.
Because we're dealing with word parts. The easiest way to learn the new language is really looking at the word part, structural analysis. We do it through, in English, you do it through phonics or the sounds of the words, but you also do it with syllables. And when you start with syllables, it just makes it a lot easier. Word parts.
Because there are some people who adopt or who believe in the holistic view of language learning,
Yes.
who would say we have to start with learning and teaching whole words, and then later on we can go to the analytical aspect of language. Well, what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, the
Should we do it for the beginning stages?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, we're looking at the whole thing is about a holistic viewpoint, and what words do we already know that are like those other words? But I really believe that for students who want to learn another language as quickly as possible and as easy as possible, it would behoove us. It makes sense that we do word parts. And most of the writing on vocabulary we'll talk about that you do it through decoding with structural analysis. And so we're right on target here. And again, I want to make a point. Whatever anybody's doing that's already working, don't stop it, keep it. But if you find one new thing that you could add on, add it. And if something makes sense that I've hounded on today, like stop doing scrambled words and word searches that does not build vocabulary, then maybe that's something that I would have as a takeaway. So there's no right or wrong, and I never announce myself as knowing everything or having all the answers. Just ways to get there. Hope that makes sense.
Great. It makes sense, yes.
Okay, so another way to take a look at the analytic way of structural analysis has to be compound words. That was a focus area from Aziz. Now, when I wanted to start teaching compound words, whether it was kids or adults, it always made sense for me, beside all the cool activities that I have to do it with folds, paper folds and things, that we want to start with actuals, realia, or whatever word choices that you use where you guys are. But compound words, and the simplest are words that you could see: basket and ball, a broom and a stick, cheese on a burger, a doorbell, eggshell. in real life, if you wanted to teach compound words to young children or new learners, and you did anyone, anybody, anything, how do you define that, and how would you draw that or get a real handle on it? Now, in this article, it did have a few words like transparent, etc. Not transparent, I'm sorry. Foothill I could see. Oh, lightweight. I wasn't sure how I would show that. But the bottom line is start with real words when you're teaching compound words. Okay? Does that make sense to you? Nobody else ever told me this. I just kind of came to it along the years I was teaching. So you can see how easy it would be to show or to divide these words underneath or running your hand through it. You could see a cup and a cake.
Yes, one of the challenges, and maybe Hussein Fatin will agree with me on this. One of the challenges of teaching compound words and also compound adjectives, because as you know, Hussein, that we have it in the back listen, the baccalaureate. We have compound adjectives. We have also collocations, so it's a little bit confusing for students and sometimes for teachers to know the difference between these different, components, language components, compound adjectives and collocations, compound words.
Okay, so if we can take another peek, does that make sense? Again, this is just coming from me, so but it works. Does that make sense though, you two? To start with real things, concrete.
Can I add something here?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, in my classroom, because the level is A1 and A2 of my students, teaching compound word, I need to use songs with the pictures, and yes, so song is helping me to introduce or review compound words, like for example tree and house, tree house. Okay, they enjoy it, and the song is catchy and has great coordinating pictures, so it's good for young learners here. Okay,
you take two words, then you squash them together.
Like this.
What's a compound word? And then all the kids say it with us. You take two words, then you squash them together.
Yeah.
And that always works because you can see the two words. Okay,
Yes.
let's move on, Aziz.
Okay.
All right, so let's see if we can find a couple of compound words in that article. I already mentioned a few, but let's take a quick peek again. Oh, nope. Can we go back to the article for a moment?
So, compound, yes.
While we're waiting, I found handmade, lightweight, foothill. We need the article, not the list. I don't know if we can get back to it. If not, that's okay. We'll just move on. Okay. I think not. All right. Let's just go ahead. That's okay. We've already mentioned several.
So we found the handmade.
Yeah, it was handmade, lightweight, foothill were the three main ones. Okay.
Yes.
So what you say to the students, this is another way that we can learn new words in English. We can take them apart. If you have two words that are side by side and they're pushed together, that's a compound word in English. Okay. All right, we'll go to the next slide then. Okay. All right, so we do want to talk again about morphology or word study. We said that affixes, meaning where we add to the beginning or the end, they're called prefixes or suffixes. I did not have everything on these two lists. I noticed this morning I missed up, and then we had a word updating in the article, and I missed TION on the suffix page. So I'm always working on my work to add in as well. But this is a pretty decent list to start. And what it's showing is that by taking off, if there's a word we don't know, and if we take off a prefix or a suffix and see what the root or the base word is, very often we can easily learn the word. I always like to start with something easy like the word submarine. Sub means under the water, and so I do with my hands to go under. I also lean with students. I've done this all the way through adults where I go, again, you're facing me backwards, but I go, prefix comes before, then suffix comes after. It helps that the kinesthetics of the activity, I've never understood completely why, but it really makes a difference. They can feel it in their body, the shift. This is before and this one's after. So what would be an example in the article? If we're not going back to the article, I had down engagement, that MENT is actually a suffix. And so I can take that MENT off in my head, and I know to engage, or an engagement party where I'd wear a caftan or something beautiful if I'm celebrating. Another word was updating. That's got a prefix, up meaning before, so before. So if we go on to the next one on suffixes, we go to the next slide. We're doing great. Okay, on the suffixes, the endings, look at what we can do with words just by knowing that those endings, ANT. So many words in English have an ending with an ANT. Or hood, childhood, statehood, etc. And you two, or anyone, again, I can't see what the audience is writing, but can you think of any words that have a prefix and a suffix that made a big difference for your learners? And why do you think it's important? It's not just me thinking this. I know we all need to know that prefixes and suffixes make a huge difference in learning vocabulary, because so many of our words came from other languages. Okay.
Rita.
Yes.
Rita, suffixes and prefixes are very important because the learners, they through learning the suffixes and prefixes, they understand the logic of the language, first of all.
Yes. Yes.
Then they start to generalize some of these patterns. Of course, they can know that prefixes and suffixes can be extended to other vocabulary. And second, it's exciting. It's exciting. It's like sometimes it's like a puzzle when you get students to find out the suffixes and prefixes. And there are students who enjoy it, who would even go and do further research and bring you words that you haven't even heard about. So you kind of drive the students into an inquiry where they will try to amaze you with much more vocabulary. That's why I really believe in project-based learning, even in language, in learning patterns of the language like this, where you encourage the students to go out and find a list as long as possible and bring it to the classroom and teach the other students prefixes and suffixes. Yeah.
And everything that we're doing, unless they are home on remote learning alone, all the activities can be done in a pair or in triads, etc. Absolutely. Prefixes and suffixes are absolutely fun to teach, and they make a huge difference in learning another language. Let's go to that next slide, and I want to show you something. Sometimes I have students hold up cards. One is a P and one is an S. And so I go, is it a prefix or a suffix? And all of a sudden the hands go up. It's like choral response is all. So there's lots of easy things that we can do that we haven't been doing because we just didn't know it, or we forgot about it, or we just didn't want to make time. And the things that I do are not ones that cost money. It's about using stuff from around the house. All right, so if we move on from this to the format or the organizer sheet. Oh, maybe I didn't put it in there. Okay, we went on to, all right, before we go to idioms, I just want to make a point again then that I somehow lost a slide. What I picked out for today with Aziz was we cut out all the pages on all the activities we could do just because of time, but we wanted to do how to organize the structural pieces with the formats. And so again, I would have the format would be a sort of thing. All right. We added in idioms. idioms are not part of the structure. Again, structure of the English language is syllables, compound words, word families. We mentioned a little contractions I took out just for sake of time. Contractions I like to teach because you take the letter out and you put the apostrophe in. And so they're lots of fun. We did roots, prefix, suffixes, or mention them. We added in idioms because it's very colorful. It's very cultural. And it was our feeling that a lot of students might enjoy practicing with idioms, but for many students, it would be extremely challenging. So Aziz and I have gone through these lists of idioms, and I'm just wondering if we could act out one, or if there's one you think. I did ask my 10-year-old granddaughter, Morgan, to look at the list, and she goes, well, Mom, you say all this stuff all the time. I always hear you say it, and she knew what most of them were, but are there any of these that you two see that you think might be either of interest or very challenging to your students? Because to build vocabulary, we also have to look at some of the cultural aspects, and this is one. Idioms are knockout either in a good way or one where we need to stretch a little.
Rita, I think idioms are just fantastic. It's a very, very interesting part of the language, because through teaching idioms, you are trying to do different things. You are teaching vocabulary and structures. You are teaching cultural concepts.
Yes.
You are teaching values as well. And you are trying to compare cultures. There are some idioms which are used in many languages. I mean, almost the same words in different languages. And then students can also discover the meaning behind the idiom and perhaps the rationale of the idiom. It's really exciting. And from my experience as a former language teacher, I often was surprised with how intelligent the students are in finding the meanings and in understanding the meanings of idioms. Sometimes we underestimate the students, but we find out that, wow, they know it, they get it. Because the students are so eager to learn, they are so curious. And because of this curiosity, they try to do their best to understand the meaning behind the idiom. And there is an exercise I used to do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry.
What
No,
would be?
I thought you were done. I thought I was going to ask you to pick out one in particular. Okay. Go ahead with what you're saying. I'm sorry. No, I interrupted you. I apologize. Could you just go on there?
No problem. No problem, Rita. I was just making.
You said the students they like doing it. Okay. All right. Do you two see one in particular that might be real interesting or might be challenging for the kids? Like elbow grease? What in the world would that mean? Elbow grease. Get in there with elbow grease. I can feel it in my bones.
Face the music.
Fair and square. Or face the music, yes. It could be challenging.
Face the music. Would that be in other languages as well? Would kids in Tunisia use that? Or in Morocco?
I don't think so.
Like fish out of water. What about that one? Would that make sense?
Yes, maybe you have it in Arabic. Fish
Yeah.
out of water, like a
I
fish
thought-
out of water. I'm not sure, but I think I heard this expression somewhere.
Are there any idioms here that would translate pretty close?
Because fish out of water, it makes sense when a fish out of water, it's in
Right.
it's not in a good position.
Now
So
you're in
it's-
trouble. You're in trouble. Aren't they fun though? I could see acting out a lot of them. Dog-tired, birds of a feather. Now that's interesting. Lofstein. Woo.
But it's also fun to get the students to guess, like what we are doing now.
Right.
Get them to guess before.
That's why we model. Aziz and I don't tell. We like to model. Rub someone the wrong way. It'd be a lot of fun. All right, so we've got that notion then that idioms are colorful. They are also about culture for sure. Idioms sometimes are in designated cultures. There may be a culture who uses a set of idioms as particular to that particular culture. And if you would look up idioms, you're going to hear just about the same stuff, but nobody really talks about how you teach idioms. And we just did. You can have a lot of fun with them. All right. Can we move on?
Yes.
We could spend all day on them. They're really fun. All right, to wrap up the reading, it's very important that we always close lessons, and it could be through ticket to leave, it could be one big idea, or I think that, etc. So to wrap up the reading here, we've got pick out maybe 2 big ideas that you got today, and it could be just that it validated you. It may not be a new idea at all, but you go, boy, I knew I was right on that, and I'm going to keep doing it. Or. We might also summarize the text to wrap up, or we could say, I'm excited about. So we have different ways that we can be closing before we do a KWL. So I'm going to ask you 2 to start because I can't see the audience right now. Would you pick a 1 or a second one or a third one? Aziz, why don't you do one first? Oh, let's go back.
Which one?
Let's go back. Yeah, right here. Okay.
I like summarizing the. I like this one related to summarizing the text.
Okay.
But if we use if we give students sentence frames, we can help them do this, and also like a short paragraph, not turn it to a real writing activity.
Well, we know reading and writing go together, so that would certainly work. And again, we don't know whether students are going to be on iPads or Chromebooks or face-to-face yet. Everybody's going to be in a different situation. And so that's why I've attempted to be kind of loose as I say things, because I really don't know what everyone will be facing yet. It's year 3 of what we're enduring.
We're facing some kind of music.
We're facing the music right now, aren't we? I haven't started.
Rita, I find the third technique is probably more engaging. I am excited about because this is where the students' personalities and you know when the students are engaged in expressing their emotions and hopes. So probably for this text, one student might say, "I'm excited about trying some of the clothes, the takshita, for example, or the ra'a, or any item there, or maybe visiting the place that the text is talking about." So the students will relate the text to their personalities, to their hopes, their wishes, etc. But the other 2, of course, are important because they help students develop what are called the higher order skills, because when they are able to summarize, they are able to distinguish primary ideas from secondary ideas, and they can tell you the main point. And probably what I could add to these techniques is what they think about the text. One thing I agree with, or one thing I disagree with, or one thing I could add to the text, something like some critical thinking aspect to the reading text. Yeah.
In my book, I have lots of situations like that where I'll do, here's what I think before the reading, and here's what I think now after I read it. So yes, there's a wide variety in there. There's no end to what we can do. And that's terrific. Exactly. I really appreciate your input. We need that. That's great. And how about in Tunisia? How would our students do with this?
I think that my students, okay, I remember just right now, I have a student that he wanted to change the end of the text. So it was about Lily, the story of Lily and the wolf. And he said, okay, we have the point of view of Lily, and I want to know if the wolf he has his point of view. So he wants to see if the wolf was just the victim, not the bad characters in the story. So I was very excited about his critical thinking and how he was trying to have new vocabulary and even expressing himself. So it's good to give them the opportunity to raise their voices and to think independently without pushing them, okay?
Yes, exactly. That's beautifully stated. May we go on to the KWL now?
Okay.
All right, so we did the first two frames as we started, what I know and what I want to know. Now we're on I learned and I want to know. So what's one thing that we learned? Let's see, I can say, I'm looking at my notes. I learned new pronunciations for Moroccan words that I didn't know. And I want to know a lot more. Just like with the food last time, we used food article, and I was so hungry by the time we finished, I wanted a drone to bring me the food. That was on food traditions of Morocco. I'd like to have some tea right now with real sweet sugar, a lot of sugar in it. The sweet tea.
So you learned new vocabulary. What do you want to know?
For me right now, what I want to know is the rest of the clothing articles that I didn't pronounce correctly. I need to go back and make sure that I can pronounce them correctly and understand the meaning of those in terms of the cultural aspect and in terms of the language. So again, we're modeling for the students, always modeling. Emmy, model everything, always model everything. If we don't show an example of something, how can we expect them to know what to do? All right. How about you two, our other guest teachers today?
Well, I learned one good way of using the KWL chart, which is to extend it to include what I want to know. And Rita told me there is a fifth column as well.
Aziz has, I shouldn't be saying this, but I think Aziz, if he still has the extra book and you're Morocco, we might be able to inherit another copy of my book. It is available from Amazon, and I found it does deliver to Morocco.
So the fifth column, Rita, is, can you remind us of the fifth column?
The fourth column was I want to know, and then the fifth column is where will I find it?
Where do I find it?
Yeah,
Yes,
where do I
where do I-
in other words, where do you go now? I mean, is there another reading you want to do? Do you want to get online? Do you want to go to that online dictionary? Is this a Wikipedia? Where do you find it? I think that when Donna Ogle did this in the 70s, her KWL has been a worldwide universal success the same way as Bloom's taxonomy.
Okay,
but these other columns I think are imperative.
So just to finish, I said I learned one better way of using the KWL chart. I want to know how much cultural knowledge of vocabulary, like for example idioms, how much is enough? How much is enough? Because sometimes you have a long list of idioms and you might end up boring the students or making it challenging for the students. Right. Where do I find it out is probably some research, to read more research about teaching idioms to students.
Or maybe sharing your experience with another teacher, finding about what other teachers do.
Action research. Yes. Exactly, some action research.
Yeah, so that's our whole point, is always to turn this into worldwide. It's not just what I did here in the United States of 50 years and 600 classrooms worth plus. It's about what's already working. We don't throw out stuff that's already working. I get infuriated every time there's a new pendulum swing and all of a sudden, we're not going to do that anymore. Like I said, all of a sudden queuing isn't important and QARs aren't important. I don't want to be using acronyms this morning. But every time there's a change doesn't mean I want to change. Well, if I'm doing something that I know is working, I have to stay with fidelity to that. And I'm never going to compare myself to that teacher next door, what he or she is doing, unless there's something that is working well and I want to do it.
Because the contexts are different. Yeah.
Absolutely. There you go. And depending on what country we're in, what even state to state in our country, the United States, people teach differently and have different curriculum. So the assessment piece gets really muddy, but I'm not a big on standardized tests. Anyway.
So there is a comment from Mukhtar from Facebook. What do you think about guessing from context?
Well, that's what I was saying. In the new reading wars. Context cues or clues are not really in anymore. They don't want you going to context. And I'm like, well, I don't understand that. I believe in QARs. Does it look right? Queuing, does it look right? Does it sound right? Doesn't make sense. If they don't know, they won't do it that way. Same thing with context. If we see words around it, I don't see why in the world we'd say we shouldn't be teaching with context cues and just phonics. No. We need the context of the sentence to make sense. We didn't talk much about sight words. I have some issues with sight word lists. I do have some sight words in my book, but they're sight words that are very commonly used and easy to get at sight words. So again, I'm very troubled by the notion of just memorizing, whether it's sight words or idioms or anything else. That's not the way to teach it. And gobbledygook stuff that doesn't make sense is not a good way to teach it. But yes, I definitely believe in context cues or clues to see the words around it. What we're saying is there's lots of ways to get at it, but it's not word attack. We're not attacking anything. We are decoding through our knowledge of sounds and letters in the English language. We are using the context. We are going to use, does it look right, make sense to me? We are going to use the structure of the language, which is the major thing we focused on today. And we're going to use some formats or organizers. I don't care whether kids keep a word bank or adults in their notebooks or by hand. They can do flashcard drill packs. Whatever you want to do will work, but you can't do it once. The only way a word will stand out once is called the, here we go, the von Restorff effect. Something unusual stands out and the kids will remember it. Otherwise, it takes sometimes many repetitions of a word to remember it. We can't say, people say.
Do you have a comment about this? Hassan, do you have a comment?
No, I just wanted to read a question from Facebook, Aziz.
Yes.
Did I finish
Another
that
question.
answer? Was that okay? Did we get that? I think we did. I'm going to say it's done. Okay, next.
Yeah, I think it's clear.
Okay.
The next question I can read, Aziz, is by Habib Al-Query. I like the KWL chart, but how to implement the technique with total beginner learners?
Yes.
Not a problem.
He's asking.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Rita,
ahead.
can you
Why don't
talk
you,
about-
you want to grab that? If we have new learners and maybe even kindergarten and first graders, and yes, I do it all the way.
No, I
down.
know that you are experienced. You have a lot of experience with young learners, so this question is maybe for you.
Well, my last teaching until I was ill was preschool a few years ago, and having started as a high school English teacher and ending up in preschool with a literacy grant was really different. But no, I did the same thing with the little kids. I ask them what you know about it, and I don't see any issue with that at all. You just use their own language, and you can
Yes.
again drop pictures. or use
Rita, I think what probably the person is asking, it's not about the age, it's the beginner learners. He's probably talking about the Moroccan context where the students don't understand the instruction in English. Yes.
I don't have that answered. I'll go back to Aziz then. Your turn. Yours. I don't have the Moroccan context, so I won't answer it then.
Yeah, because probably what I understand is if we have a group of beginner students like in high school, the first time they are studying English and they don't understand the instructions of, they don't, the concept of the KWL is new to them. Okay. I think if I were in his place of this teacher, I would introduce the chart, explain it to the students, maybe resort to the first language to give an example of something I know, something I want to know, something, to model it for the students.
Yes, you have to model it.
If needed, I might resort to the first language, to maybe to French or to Arabic, if needed, why not? But if I can model it with a simple example, that would make sense to the students, I think.
No, that's what we've been saying. It's all about modeling. And that's why we did everything the way we did today, even though I couldn't see the audience. I know that they're there, but you have to model everything and you have to adapt it. And do I have all the answers? No, because I am not the second language.
Rita, one thing I learned in my teaching experience is you try things, even if you are not sure they are going to work, try them. And then after that, try to see if they worked good. If they didn't work, try to ask yourself why it didn't work and try to improve. It's very simple. I mean, you should not be afraid of trying new things, trying the
No.
KW chart with beginners. They explain it and they try to use different ways of explaining and they
Right.
model, and that's it. I mean, little by little, they will get used to it.
Well, what we're talking about, the whole thing is about repertoire. And when I say that everybody has to be a reading teacher, I mean it. But I'm not talking about knowing how to do every reading program and everything, but these basic skills, the schema, how to get them into the lesson, how to access the lesson. When we did comprehension, we worked on how to use a book, how to do a book walk, critical thinking, Bloom's taxonomy. But today, as vocabulary is merging, we're seeing the same notion that it all goes together, and we need to make sure it makes sense. If I do something and it doesn't work, it may not work with first period, but if I have students in third period, I can do the same thing, and it's gonna work like gem. So the whole notion is that of repertoire. And the 3 R's, risk plus repertoire equals results, good ones. If I don't do anything new and I keep doing something the way it was always working, and I have students who are farther behind where I think they should be or where they want to be, then I got to do something different. But if you don't have those tools for your toolkit, if you just are following a reading program, a script, and I'm fidelity to it, that's not going to be enough this year in particular, because kids are going to have a lot of needs coming back to school or online school, whatever the case may be. So we're in total agreement here, and I just hope that the people at home and audience listening to us today, or when we post the link, will be in agreement with us, and I'm sure they will. You just have to have repertoire. This is one piece of a pie, just one piece, and I am not the expert on the cultural aspects of teaching in Morocco or Tunisia, but you all are. So if you can apply what I brought to you today, then that's how Aziz and I have been learning together. We learn from each other.
You are an expert now because you learned some Arabic words.
I'm working on it. My pronunciation isn't very good yet. So the things that I don't know help me to understand students. You know, if I could do everything as well as I do reading and writing, I'd be in great shape, but my math and my tech skills are not there. So I'm always working and learning. But what it does is help me have empathy for these students, and I'll do anything to figure out a way to reach them. Whatever I can do as a teacher, doesn't matter to me what they come in with. I don't want to hear anymore about learning loss and learning recovery. We're talking about just great teaching from our hearts and from our heads, what we know to share with them to help make them great readers in all of this.
Okay. So maybe we go to the next one. Maybe this is the last slide.
We sure are. Excitement's mounting. What does it say? There it is. Thank you. We know thank you in any language. And I would first of all like to thank you, Aziz, for taking a risk with me. We are, as far as I know, the only two have been co-teaching from Morocco and Oregon or other places. And it is a great eye-opening experience. I can't begin to tell you how much Aziz is teaching me. I don't know that I teach him anything, but maybe, maybe here and there. Now we're thinking out of one head all the time.
Thank you so much, Hussein, Fatin, and Rita. This was really a great session.
Thank you very much.
We learned a lot from tonight's session.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I just want to remind the audience that we have another workshop coming with Rita, based also on her book. And also, I want to remind people that Rita is Everyone Academy Ambassador in Oregon. So she is doing a great job, you know, spreading the word about the academy in you know, US media, in radios, in podcasts, and that was really great.
Well, I had a wonderful time, and I'm so glad that we had our two teachers join us. What a difference that makes, having extra feedback as we go. I hope you two had a good time.
Thank you very much, Rita, for the wonderful job you are doing for the teachers and for the academy, for the network of English language teachers in Morocco and beyond Morocco, in Tunisia and in other countries. Thank you. It's really a great pleasure meeting you today and you know, discussing this very important topic with you.
Same to you, and we will be learning much, much more. There's always more to learn, as we found out.
Sure,
This is,
sure,
this is terrific.
sure.
This is just great.
Thank
I
you,
have-
Fatin. Fatin, thank you very
also,
much.
Fatin, for
Thank you,
Nice to
Rita.
meet you.
Thank you, Aziz, Lahsan. Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you.
It is an unforgettable night for me. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rita. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, I was so
Thank you,
delighted
everyone.
meeting you. Have a wonderful time.
Yes, bye bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. See you
Take
next
care.
time.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. See you
Bye-bye.
next time.
Bye.
Okay, here we go.